So, as you know, we've had all of those of you who've sent in your questions. Thank you very much. We've had a huge response to this one. We won't be able to guarantee that we'll be able to answer all of your questions in detail. We will try as much as we can to send individual responses. If you don't get one, I'm really sorry, but it's just we had so many questions. What we'll do today, if that's all right with you, Sally, is we're going to try to knock this into a broad themed format. So what we're going to start with is really the question of the overview of policing strategy during the lockdown, and any particular areas that you want to cover off arising from the questions which will come up. So over to you.
Thank you. And first of all, our policing strategy is very clear. We will do what we always do. We will speak to people. We will engage, explain, encourage, and then only as a last resort would we enforce the new legislation. So as we always are, we're here, the Metropolitan Police, we're here for London and here for the residents of Richmond Borough. And we're all adapting to the new legislation in our different ways, and it's the same for the police service. So we are very keen to encourage people to stick by the government instructions and the guidelines, and enforcement is only our last resort. And we're very grateful to the people of the borough for how they are sticking to those guidelines, and how they are staying at home, unless there are essential reasons for them to go out. And we will continue to do that.
Excellent. So, I mean, how are you addressing the issue of patrolling at the moment? Because we often hear that people, generally say that they don't see enough police on the streets at the moment. But but when they're at home on a regular basis, perhaps the perception is even more than it usually is. So, how are you going about patrolling at the moment?
We're patrolling in the way that we do normally. So we're a big and resilient organisation, and we're able to flex our resources across the organisation. So we still have our emergency response teams patrolling 24 hours a day, and we still have our neighbourhood officers, our dedicated ward officers out in the community as well. And also we have additional officers who are working in the parks and open spaces, and encouraging people to stick by the advice. So certainly this bank holiday weekend, there will be extra officers out, um, trying to help the people of Richmond Borough protect the NHS and stay at home. So you'll still see officers, and we're getting lots of feedback around how we are talking to people and encouraging them.
Okay, so this bank holiday weekend, for example, is largely, would you suggest, going to be an advisory exercise, or could there be enforcement if people aren't listening to the advice?
Yes, it will largely be an advisory exercise. So explaining to people and encouraging them to go back home or to disperse. Um, and only as a last resort would we use the powers of enforcement that we've been given under the health protection legislation.
Okay, and by and large, do you find that people are listening to the advice and you're not having to go down the enforcement route?
Yes,
Good.
absolutely. People are listening. And generally, when we are talking to people who are out, they are sticking to the social distancing, and they are out for their daily exercise, or they are out for shopping. So the majority of people are, and occasionally we do have to tell people to go home or ask them to disperse. But in very few cases would we need to enforce.
Excellent. So, I mean, social distancing, I'm sure that it's the big issue which gets raised with you. It's certainly the one that gets raised most with me. Uh, and it's largely around our open spaces because, it's nice weather and people want to go out. And we have the beautiful river on both sides of the borough, both the only borough with both sides of the river. So, how are you policing social distancing down by the river? Are there any particular issues that you want to address there?
It was busy last Saturday down by Richmond Riverside. We did have officers on patrol. You'll understand that we have a number of parks and open spaces, and the towpaths as well in the borough. So you again, you will see officers out on patrol this weekend, encouraging people not to be in groups, and to stick to social distancing. And by and large, the vast majority of the people that we spoke to last weekend were complying with that, and I'm sure it will be the case this weekend. We're also working closely with the council, with the park guard, to encourage people to stay at home. Our predominant message is, of course, to stay at home.
Yeah, because I mean, I'm sure that you agree that one of the things that we don't want to go down the road of is, as some other boroughs were forced to over the weekend, is to close our parks.
In the police, we certainly wouldn't be advising the council to close parks and open spaces. That's very much a decision for the council. Certainly, I recognise that that people need to go out and exercise if they don't have a garden, and I would ask that they do that responsibly, in line with the very clear government guidelines.
Okay, and we had a few questions about, not just by the river, but on the river. So people whipping around in kayaks and canoes just for the sheer hell of it. Is there any restrictions on that?
So on the government advice, it doesn't specify, but I did see that question, and I looked up on the Canal and River Trust website, where it does clearly say no canoeing or kayaking or paddleboarding on the river at the current time. So that was clear advice. Please don't do that.
Excellent. Okay, how about people when they're at home? So that people may want to have kids' parties. It's going to be nice weather, few friends and neighbours around for a barbecue in the garden. How about that?
That's not what the advice says. It's very clear. Stick to your own family, to your own household. It's as I've said, we're all adapting to this. But no, no house parties, no visiting relatives if they don't live with you, no visiting friends, no groups at all, and that's very clear in the guidance for the good reason, to
Yeah.
protect the virus from spreading.
Yeah, absolutely. Because somebody comes to your house and they could either bring it in or take it away and take it to their social networks. I mean, it is good, reasonable advice, I think.
Yes, I agree.
In terms of people going along on the pavements and joggers and walkers, we're finding that there's a degree of conflict there. I mean, any advice for people there?
I would ask people to be sensible and considerate, and respectful of others. And I'm sure that the majority of people are doing so in this extraordinary time.
Excellent. Okie dokie. How about, I mean, a few of the questions that we had coming up were people who wanted to drive a degree of distance. I mean, one of the questions was, if my local Waitrose is busy, can I drive over to West Byfleet to use that Waitrose? I dare say that that's not on, but there are more pressing issues, perhaps, such as funerals or visiting relatives in hospital.
Again, I've looked up the guidance, and to stress that we would be enforcing this as a last resort, but the questions are there. Spend the minimal amount of time out of the house. So shopping, it's for essential items only. Um, Certainly, I don't think the government would be encouraging driving a long distance to a particular supermarket. That is not minimizing travel and essential shopping. Visiting relatives, again, the advice is clear: don't visit relatives unless they live in your household. And hospital visits, most hospitals, I understand, have strict regulations at the moment for obvious reasons, about limiting visitors. So my advice would be to check first, but to minimize the time away from the home. Obviously, the guidelines do give the scope to care for the vulnerable, or to provide medical assistance, and it's a case-by-case basis, but for good reasons. Please minimize the amount of time you stay away from the home, and visits to relatives that don't live with you are not encouraged by the government.
Of course, I mean, one of the things which possibly gets overlooked is that the longer people are out of the home, I mean, it sounds almost nanny statish, but the higher the risk of having an accident. And everybody says, well, I'm not going to have an accident, but that's why they're called accidents. You don't know that you're going to have one. And if there is an accident, it places extra burden on the NHS, which is already being run ragged. I'm sure you'll agree.
Absolutely, the NHS don't need any extra demand on it from accidents, and coming onto that that whole subject of road danger. We have seen across London a rise in speeding. So the roads are quieter, there are fewer people driving, and unfortunately a very small minority of people are driving at excessive speeds. So my message is, firstly, we are out every day. Our roads and transport colleagues in the Metropolitan Police are out doing enforcement for speeding in the most high-risk areas. In marked police cars and unmarked cars, and we take this very seriously. The whole issue of speeding during the lockdown, and of course we want to minimise the amount of journeys on the roads, and also do not speed because the risk of having an accident at an excessive speed is significantly higher.
Okay, just onto some more specific questions which have come in. So, one of the issues which has been raised is how we're helping the homeless during this particular time, and the police's role in that. So, if you could give some thoughts on that one.
So largely, this is a multi-agency response to support homeless people in the borough, and we're certainly represented on the council's forum and working with local charities to support rough sleepers. And I'm aware that efforts are taking place to provide accommodation for rough sleepers across the borough, and that's and we would support that.
Excellent. One of the issues which gets raised with me a lot is those businesses which can stay open, those businesses that can't stay open. So, I mean, small building sites where social distancing is very difficult is possibly the biggest one in my post bag. But things like car washes, any thoughts on those?
So again, this would be a council matter in terms of trading standards and environmental health to look at enforcing those regulations. But certainly, I've looked that up, and car washes, hand car washes, shouldn't be operating now. The guidance is clear, but if that came through to us, if it was reported to us, we would refer that to the council for trading standards to take action. And I know that. That we are working with your colleagues in the council around the enforcement of regulations with buildings and premises.
Okie dokie. On the subject of general crime now, so there's been a perceived rise in crime, such as drug use or burglary in alleys around the borough. I mean, the question is, why aren't you doing more? But I mean, for me, the question might be, is this a perception or is this reality?
It's not reality, actually. The opposite. The number of reported crimes, so burglaries and robberies, has significantly reduced since the lockdown began, as you might expect. So that is certainly the case. Of course, we're still giving good crime prevention advice, and we don't want people to leave items on display in their vehicles. But no, the level of recorded crime has dropped. And we are still out on patrol. So we are still doing patrols to target drug dealers, suppliers, and antisocial behaviour. So our neighbourhood teams are out, and also we have a tasking team, and they are also out regularly. You know, we are also adapting to the regulations. We obviously want to. We want to be good role models around the social distancing, but we also want to maintain policing. So you will still find us out on patrol and driving and walking and cycling and tackling crime, because that's what we're here to do. We're here to prevent crime and keep the borough safe. And that's what we'll do. And of course, residents can report that to us in the normal ways.
Now, as you know, both of us tweet, and I'm sure that our clever captioning elves will put our hashtags or whatever they are. And the one which I saw from you recently, which I really liked, was about domestic violence and people saying, "Oh, you can't go into houses because of coronavirus spreading." And you said, "If there's domestic violence going in that house, that door's going down, and I'm going in." Would you like to expand on that? Because I thought that was smashing.
Yes, so I don't think I quite said the door was going down, but I did say we will come through the door. So if
Yeah.
you call us, we will come. So this is something that is very Very clear for me. As you know, I was a victim of domestic violence myself, and I can't imagine what it must be like to be in the lockdown with somebody who is abusing and controlling you. Very, very difficult. We are absolutely committed to giving you the support. We are there for you. Call us and we will come. And we're working closely with Richmond Council and the support agencies around publicising the National Domestic Violence Helpline. If you need to call 999 and you need to press the 55, which is the silent call, you can do that. They will know that you're not able to speak. There is a range of help available. So we are very committed. We will come. It's one of our top priorities at the moment.
That's really reassuring to know. Thank you for that. Let me see. So there are different ones now. I mean, this is possibly one we can't do much about. People are getting a lot more pestering at home through cold calling. Is there anything that we can suggest to help people with that?
The usual precautions, I think, I would advise, and certainly be very careful about scams. And on our website, met.police.uk, there is a lot of advice around scam prevention. Unfortunately, there are some disgusting people out there that are seeking to target people, even in this time of national crisis. Yeah, be very careful about the normal rules apply. Don't give out your bank details. Don't engage with people who are cold calling. Use facilities that you've got on your phone to block. Be careful. Yes.
Okie dokie. I mean, we had something fairly recently in Sheen where they'd gone to the trouble of having professional looking bags printed so they could hold them up to elderly residents and say, would you like to go for a walk? As though it was some official registered charity. So they are very sophisticated scammers these days.
Yes, very sophisticated, and I would urge all the residents of the borough to be very careful and to check first. Either check with the council, or if somebody is purporting to be a police officer, check with 101. But never accept those offers if you're not entirely sure. And if in doubt, be suspicious.
Yeah, because but nine, it could well be I should have explained. It could well be a distraction burglary, get the residents out of the house, and then their partners have got free reign to do what they like.
Yes, and yeah, absolutely, and unless you're expecting somebody to come and deliver food for you, or you're expecting a visit, then don't engage, don't open the door.
Okay, whether it's a pandemic or whether it's a period of normalcy, we often get complaints about people cycling on pavements and on towpaths, but it seems to be on the increase at the moment. People are asking, should we be monitoring this more carefully? Any thoughts?
I think we have to look at where the greatest risk is. So when we are dealing with our whole range of policing issues, where does the greatest risk come that we need to tackle? And I think if we come across it, we will of course advise, and if necessary, take action around cycling on the pavement, because it's against the law and it's also antisocial. But it's certainly in terms of the dangers at the moment and the risks, we would be prioritising other areas in order to keep the residents safe.
Okay, that's fair enough. Couple of final points. Obviously, people want to make sure that that their neighbours or other people that they see in the street are abiding by the same rules as they are. Um, what rights do residents have to challenge those people who they may feel are not following the rules?
My advice would be to be sensible and considerate and respectful of each other. And if a neighbour wants to say to another neighbour, you shouldn't be doing that, then I think that's fine, and that's a normal neighbourly behaviour. What I would say, I wouldn't want any of our residents to put themselves at risk,
No.
or to cause an antisocial behaviour, to cause a nuisance themselves. So, but I think I'm sure that people are sensible about that, And I don't think that would be a matter for the police to intervene in if neighbours were giving each other advice on social distancing, unless they started to break the law, in which case they should call us. If people think that the regulations are being breached, they absolutely can report that to us.
Excellent.
And there's a range of ways that they can do that. So first of all, they can call 101. That's our non-emergency police phone line. So please don't call 999 to report a breach of their health protection, the coronavirus legislation, but call 101. Or you can go onto our website, met.police.uk, and you will see the link there to tell us about, and you can tell us about somebody who's breaching the regulations, and you can follow that through. And the other way to do it is to, if you do use Twitter, to tweet at MEtCC, and they will also put that into the system. And then that will come through to us, to the local units, and we will decide how we deal with that. We won't always attend ourselves. We will give advice, or in some cases we will attend. And then, as I've said, we will encourage people to abide by the guidelines, and in the very last resort, we will enforce. But we are absolutely open for people to contact us, and we are getting calls from the public all the time who are concerned that people are not abiding by the social distancing, or people have house parties or barbecues, and of course we want to do our part to make sure people do stick by those regulations.
Excellent. So we're just about to go into the bank holiday. We're coming to the end of our time now. So as we go into the bank holiday weekend, any final thoughts or messages for residents of Richmond about social distancing or behaviour as we go into this, what looks like it's going to be a very nice sunny weekend?
Yes, my message to the public of Richmond would be to stay at home unless you have to go out for essential reasons. And those essential reasons are the ones set out in the government guidelines. So please stay at home to help us protect the NHS, and for you to do your part as well in protecting the NHS and saving lives and stopping the spread of the virus. And we'd be very grateful. Thank you.
Excellent. Well, Sally, I'm sure I speak on behalf of everybody in the borough to say thank you to you and your teams for all the work you're doing. It's immensely appreciated. So big round of applause to you. I'm sure that when everybody's on their doorstep this evening at 8 o'clock clapping for nurses, they're clapping for your teams just as much.
Thank you very much.
Take care. Good to see you.
Okay, you too.
Bye-bye.
Bye.